Namaskar, good evening viewers. You have tuned into the news on Sansad TV with me, Bhavna Nair. This is one bulletin that gives you a roundup of all the top national and international news and much more. As always, first up the headlines this Wednesday evening. Election Commission issues notification for presidential elections. 17 opposition parties meet to decide joint candidate. Start of new era for telecom sector. Cabinet approves auction of 5G spectrum, 72 GHz to be auctioned by the end of July. Export boom in May. Exports rise 20.5% to $38.94 billion. Gems and jewelry increase to close to $3.5 billion. Rahul Gandhi appears before Enforcement Directorate for third day in a row. Congress holds protest. Many leaders and workers detained. Monkeypox outbreak unusual and worrying, says Director General of the World Health Organization. 1,600 cases detected in 39 countries. And now a look at some more important story news of the day. Fuel production more than sufficient to take care of any surge in demand, assures government in response to reports of shortages in some states. Department of Pension and Pensioners Welfare to launch AI-enabled common single pension portal, says Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh. Terrorist who killed bank manager in Jammu and Kashmir shot dead in Shopian. Suspected murderer of school teacher trapped in Kulgam. Surat becomes first city in the country to get processed steel slag road. Union Minister Ramchandra Prasad inaugurates first 6-lane highway. ASEAN foreign ministers meeting to start in New Delhi on Thursday. It will be the first meeting hosted by India in New Delhi. Gangster Lawrence Bishnoi, accused in the killing of Punjabi singer Sidhu Moosewala, remanded to Punjab police custody till June 22nd. SSLC result 2022 declared in Kerala, 99.26% clear class 10. 44,363 students get A+. NASA to invite public to view first images and spectroscopic data from the James Webb Space Telescope. Report to be released on July 12th. China's lunar lander Chang'e 5 finds evidence of water on the moon. Delivers first real-time on-site definitive confirmation. And former England captain Joe Root rises to #1 in Test batting rankings. Pakistan's Imam moves past Kohli to #2 spot in ODI charts. And now the top story of the day. The Union Cabinet has approved modalities for holding 5G spectrum auctions. 72,097.85 MHz of radio waves will be auctioned by July end. The Cabinet also decided to enable the development of private captive networks to spur innovation in new age industry applications like machine-to-machine communication, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence across automotive, healthcare, agriculture, energy and other sectors. A total of 72,097.85 MHz of spectrum with a validity period of 20 years will be put to auction by the end of July 2022. The auction will be held for spectrum in various low 600 MHz, 700 MHz, 800 MHz, 900 MHz, 1800 MHz, 2100 MHz, 2300 MHz and mid 3300 MHz and high 26 GHz frequency bands. Moving on, after the Election Commission notification, filing of nominations for the 18th July presidential elections started on Wednesday. 29 June will be the last date for filing nomination. Scrutiny will be on 30th June, while the last date for withdrawal will be July 2nd. Counting of votes will take place on 21st July. 4,809 members of the Electoral College, which is 776 MPs and 4,033 MLAs, will elect the new president. President Kovind's term ends on 24th July. 11 candidates filed their nominations with the returning officer, Secretary General Rajya Sabha P.C. Modi, in his office in room number 29, Parliament House, New Delhi. One nomination was rejected as it was not accompanied with a certified copy of the entry relating to the candidate in the electoral roll of the parliamentary constituency in which the candidate is registered as voter. Candidates need 50 elected representatives, each as proposers and seconders, in order to weed out non-serious candidates. They also need to deposit Rs 15,000 as security between 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on working days with the office of the returning officer. And now the BJP started the process to reach a consensus on the presidential candidate. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh spoke to the Congress leader and leader of opposition in Rajya Sabha, Mallikarjun Kharge. He also consulted West Bengal Chief Minister and TMC Chief Mamata Banerjee as well as Samajwadi Party Chief Akhilesh Yadav. The BJP has authorized Rajnath Singh and Party President JP Nadda to hold discussions for the presidential election. Seventeen opposition parties attended a meeting convened by TMC Chief Mamata Banerjee to decide their presidential candidate. Leaders of the Congress, Samajwadi Party, Nationalist Congress Party, DMK, RJD and Left attended the meeting. The Aam Aadmi Party, Telangana Rashtra Samiti and Biju Janata Dal stayed away. The Shiv Sena, CPI, CPM National Conference, PDP, JDS, RSP, IUAML, Rashtriya Lok Dal and Jharkhand Mukti Morcha also attended the meeting. India's merchandise exports grew by 20.55% to $38.94 billion in May 2022. According to data, in May 2022, imports grew by 62.83% to $63.22 billion. Cumulative exports during April-May grew by about 25% to reach $78.72 billion. Imports grew 45.42% to $123.41 billion in April-May. Moving ahead, two different committees of Parliament presented their reports to Rajya Sabha Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu. Chairman of the Standing Committee on the Department of Commerce, V. Vijay Sai Reddy, presented the report related to his department to Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu. The Chairman of the Standing Committee on Transport, Tourism and Culture Department, T.G. Venkatesh, also with the members of the committee, also presented the report of his department.
I would like to tell all the members that the standing committees are very important. They play an important role in strengthening parliamentary democracy. This has to be understood because you get ample time in the committee. Secondly, there is no camera, so you can raise above party and then express your views. And thirdly, there is a possibility of broad consensus.
Former Congress President Rahul Gandhi appeared before the Enforcement Directorate for the third day in a case related to the National Herald newspaper. Rahul Gandhi was accompanied by his sister and Congress General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi Vadra. Prohibitory orders were enforced and a large number of police and paramilitary personnel were deployed at the ED's office. The ED questioned Rahul Gandhi for over 11 hours on Tuesday and for over 10 hours on Monday. Congress leaders and workers held protest on the third day of the ED's questioning, after which the police took several people into custody. Police also imposed Section 144 in the area adjacent to the Congress headquarters. And some more news from across the nation. President Ramnath Kovind laid the foundation stone for the new Raj Bhavan building in Donapola near Goa's capital Panaji. The new building will have facilities like rainwater harvesting to reduce the impact of climate change. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Spanish Foreign Minister Jose Manuel Alvarez signed an MOU. Both leaders stressed the need to strengthen the bilateral partnership. The discussions also focused on the developments in the Indo-Pacific region, Ukraine, Afghanistan, South Asia, and North Africa. Indonesia's Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi arrived in India for the special ASEAN-India Foreign Ministers meeting and Delhi Dialogue 12. The Union Home Ministry announced concessions related to the Agnipath scheme. It said Agniveer soldiers recruited on short-term contract under the scheme will get priority in recruitment in the Central Armed Police Forces and Assam Rifles. India moved from 43rd to 37th place among Asian economies with the fastest recovery in the Institute for Management Developmental Annual Global Competitiveness Index. India's position improved mainly due to the performance on the economic front. A joint study by ICMR and Bharat Biotech has suggested that a booster dose for Covaxin enhances the effectiveness of the vaccine against the Delta form of the coronavirus and strengthens immunity against Omicron virus. 4 relics associated with Lord Buddha from Kapil Vastu were put on display at the Assembly Hall of Ganden Monastery in Mongolia. Union Minister Kiran Rijiju said, centuries ago, Buddhism came to Mongolia from the Himalayan regions and since then became part of priceless shared heritage. The Sports Authority of India has sanctioned Rs 6.52 crore for 2,189 players for 21 sports under the Khelo India from April to June this year. Para sports also included in the sports. Under the annual Khelo India scholarship scheme, Rs 6.28 lakh has been allocated for each residential player. Slipping into a short break here, on the other side, end of the innings for a landmark floating restaurant in Hong Kong that fed royalty like Queen Elizabeth II and movie stars including Tom Cruise. All this and much more after this break. You stay tuned to Sansad TV.
Where do you see India in the next 25 years when we celebrate our 100th year of independence? On the global economic landscape, what would be India's position according?
If we continue to grow at 10% nominal terms in dollar terms, and that too, we would be able to achieve a $10 trillion economy by about 2033. And then if we can double that, we will be able to get to a $20 trillion economy by 2040.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching their news and time now for all the main developments from the Russia-Ukraine war front. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has called on members of the military alliance to continue to supply Ukraine with heavy weaponry and long-range weapon systems, warning that there is an urgent need to step up arms deliveries. Ahead of a meeting of NATO defense ministers, Stoltenberg said that the alliance was focused on stepping up support for Kyiv, but warned it will take time for Kyiv forces to adapt to using modernized heavy weapons. The Kremlin says communication with the US remains essential despite high tensions between Moscow and Washington over the war in Ukraine. But Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said dialogue could only be conducted on the basis of mutual respect and benefit. Russia has told Ukrainian forces holed up in a chemical plant in Severodonetsk to lay down their arms as its troops press for complete control of the key city in eastern Ukraine. The head of Russia's National Defense Management Center said civilians would be let out through a humanitarian corridor. Up to 1,200 civilians may be holed up in the shelters of the Azot chemical plant in Severodonetsk. Nearly two-thirds of children in Ukraine have been uprooted during the war, according to a UN official who visited the country last week. The war in Ukraine is a child rights crisis, Afshan Khan, Europe and Central Asia Director for UNICEF said. Khan said 277 children in Ukraine have been killed and 456 injured, mostly due to explosives used in urban areas. Russia has banned dozens of British media and defense figures from entering the country. In an online statement on its website, the ministry described the ban on 29 journalists and commentators as a response to what it alleged was the British media's skewed portrayal of Moscow and its actions in Ukraine. The ministry claimed that the biased assessments are fueling Russopedia in British society. Russia's war in Ukraine is spreading a deadly litter of mines, bombs, and other explosives. They are killing civilians, disrupting planting, complicating the rebuilding of homes and villages, and will continue taking lives and limbs long after the fighting stops. Ukraine State Emergency Service said last week that 3 lakh square kilometers, the size of Italy, needs to be cleared. And time now for some more other global updates. The World Health Organization will hold an emergency meeting next week to decide if the global outbreak of monkeypox is a global health emergency. This is the highest level of warning from the United Nations Health Agency. Currently, it only applies to the COVID pandemic and polio. The Director General said the outbreak of monkeypox is unusual and worrying. So far this year, more than 1,600 cases have been confirmed in 39 countries. 1,500 people have shown symptoms. 72 people have died in countries previously affected by monkeypox. And a conference in the German capital, Berlin, is bringing together over 8,000 software developers to discuss how the interaction of code and humans will look like in the future. Developers build the blocks that much of digital world stand on. But experts are concerned that the digital world is importing the same problems that the physical world has. Take a look.
This is the VR Developers Conference in Berlin, one of the largest gatherings of software developers in Germany. The conference runs for 2 days. The developer's profession might not be as famous as more traditional jobs like lawyer or politician, but undeniably, they do have a large impact in today's world. Different speakers here are focusing on different coding languages and different topics, but there is clearly one hot topic this year.
Yeah, artificial intelligence is definitely a big topic. It's about self-driving cars, and it's not just about self-driving cars, but it's about building intelligent machines who will make our life easier in the future. So that's definitely the most important topic right now.
It is one of the first tech conferences in Germany after COVID-19 restrictions were lifted. The years of the pandemic shaped the digital industry in many ways. Video meetings all of a sudden became commonplace, and a large portion of people's lives moved online. Many people found friendships and cooperations in video games. But not all things are perfect in the digital sphere. The concern is that problems that exist in the real world are being taken to digital space as well.
We see with the metaverse trend right now these days that we are already rebuilding all the bad things which happen to us in real life. So there is sexism, racism, ableism, all the isms already in a virtual world environment. And this is a huge problem.
Ableism is discrimination in favor of able-bodied people. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And some more global news in World App. Cash-strapped Pakistan urged people to cut down the consumption of tea to help reduce the import bill eating into the country's depleting foreign exchange reserves. The appeal from Federal Minister for Planning Ehsan Iqbal came after it emerged that Pakistan consumed tea worth $400 million in the fiscal year 2021-22. He said Pakistan, one of the biggest importers of tea in the world, has to borrow money to import it. Iqbal reportedly said, "I appeal to the nation to cut down the consumption of tea by 1 to 2 cups because we import tea on loan." The 4-day 12th Ministerial Conference of the WTO was extended by 1 day till Thursday to facilitate outcomes on the main issues under discussion. At the meeting of the heads of delegations, the WTO chief called on the members to go on the extra mile to find convergence on the various issues at stake at the ministerial gathering and to be mindful that time is running out to conclude meaningful agreements. WHO is creating a new vaccine sharing mechanism to stop the outbreak of monkeypox in 30 countries beyond Africa. The move could result in the UN Health Agency distributing scarce vaccine doses to rich countries that can otherwise afford them. Health experts argue that initiative is another example of the inequity in vaccine distribution as was seen during the COVID-19 pandemic. African experts are asking why WHO has never proposed using vaccines in Central and West Africa, where the disease is endemic. Iran seemed to be readying for a space launch on Tuesday as satellite images showed a rocket on a rural desert launch pad, just as tensions remain high over Tehran's nuclear program. Images from Maxa Technologies showed a launch pad at Imam Khomeini spaceport in Iran's rural Semnan province. Images showed a rocket on a transporter preparing to be lifted. A truck carrying 34 tons of zinc fell into a major river in the Peruvian capital, affecting nearby fish farms. The truck fell into Kailon River on Monday in Huaros district, and its initial report specified that there was a loss of about 600 tons of trout. The fish are reared in the Kailon, one of the 3 rivers that cross Lima. And when it comes to what's new in the world of horticulture, people come to Amsterdam, the city that made tulips famous. The Green Tech Show has solutions for people in the plant industry, and it's not just about the flowers. To know better, more details in this report.
This year's showstopper at the Green Tech Show, the robot named Berry. Winner of this year's Green Tech Award, Berry is the creation of German company Organifarms. It checks the position, ripeness and quality of the fruit before it plucks it and puts them in separate trays. It doesn't pick as much as humans usually do, but it certainly can keep going longer than human beings. Berry harvests approximately 10 kilos an hour. A human does more, but the robot can work 24 hours, 7 days a week. But according to its makers, the robot is about creating a better quality fruit rather than producing cheaper fruit. The robot costs 1 lakh euros, definitely not a solution for all farmers. Dutch company Createch has a new robotic solution for warehousing plants and vertical storage. Another important element for successful greenhouse farming is the optimal use of light. Dutch company Signify specializes in horticulture lighting that schedules a lighting program for each crop, from seed to harvest. It is the color combination that a particular crop really likes.
For vertical farming, it's of course important to have the right lights, to have good light intensity, to have the light, we call it a light recipe actually, so it is the color combination that a particular crop really likes. And what we found over the years in our own facility, GrowWise in Eindhoven, is that for each and every crop, the combination of red, blue, far red light can be optimized to come to the maximum kilograms per square meter.
Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And from now, Green Tech to a show to now, let's take you to Jumbo Floating Restaurant, a landmark floating restaurant that fed Cantonese cuisine and seafood to Queen Elizabeth II. Tom Cruise and millions of other diners were stored from the Hong Kong harbour front on Tuesday. The Jumbo Floating Restaurant couldn't find a new owner and lacked funds to maintain it after months of COVID-19 restrictions. Here's the report.
Designed like a Chinese imperial palace, this massive floating restaurant on Aberdeen Harbour has received over 30 million guests since its establishment in 1976. Jumbo Floating Restaurant was known for its Cantonese cuisine and seafood dishes. It was forced to shut down in 2020 due to the COVID pandemic, and all staff were laid off. Since then, its parent company said it had become a financial burden to shareholders as millions of Hong Kong dollars were spent on inspection and maintenance every year, even though the restaurant was not in operation. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam had previously rejected suggestions to bail out the restaurant despite calls from lawmakers to preserve the iconic landmark. Tugboats towed the restaurant away, but it was not clear where it will berth next. Back in 1950s, there were about a dozen floating restaurants at the Aberdeen harbour. After a few decades, only 3 remained, including the Jumbo Floating Restaurant. The Jumbo Floating Restaurant consists of 2 boats adjacent to each other, a bigger boat named Jumbo Floating Restaurant and a smaller one called Thai Park Floating Restaurant. The Thai Park was built in 1950s and taken over by Jumbo's parent company in the 1980s. The floating restaurants used to be a place for businessmen to socialize in Hong Kong for the commercial meetings and for different community gatherings. The restaurant was famed for its lavish banquet meals with dishes like the roasted suckling pig, lobster and double-boiled bird's nest, a Chinese delicacy. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And time now for all the sporting action. India superstar javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra made a spectacular return to competition after his historic goal in the Tokyo Olympics with a stunning throw of 89.30 meters, shattering his own national record and placing him second in a star-studded field at the Paavo Nurmi Games in Turku, Finland. The 24-year-old Chopra's first competitive event after just over 10 months was nothing short of extraordinary, as he nearly touched the coveted 90-meter mark, considered the gold standard in the world of javelin throw. In badminton now, in the battle of 2 Indians, HS Prannoy defeated 8th seed Lakshya Sen to reach the second round of the Indonesia Open Super 1000 tournament being played in Jakarta. Lakshya Sen was no match for Prannoy today, going down to his much more experienced compatriot in straight games 10-21, 9-21. In cricket now, India opener Ishan Kishan climbed up 68 places to grab the 7th spot among batters, while the bowling duo of Bhuvneshwar Kumar and Yuzvendra Chahal also made gains in the latest ICC T20 rankings released today. Kishan, who has been one of the India's consistent performers in the ongoing T20 home series against South Africa, aggregating 164 runs in 3 matches, including 2 half-centuries. The 23-year-old is the lone Indian batter in the top 10, with KL Rahul occupying the 14th spot. Jolted by 2 harassment complaints by female athletes against their respective coaches, the Sports Authority of India today made it mandatory for national sports federations to include a woman coach in the contingents if women are competing at home and abroad. A female cyclist and a sailor had complained recently of their coaches' inappropriate behavior. Talking of tennis, the US Open will allow tennis players from Russia and Belarus to compete this year despite the ongoing war in Ukraine, which prompted Wimbledon to ban those athletes. US Tennis Association CEO and Executive Director Lou Shea said that the USTA board decided to let Russians and Belarusians enter the tournament because of the concern about holding the individual athletes accountable for the actions and decisions of their governments. The US Open starts on August 29 in New York. And before we wrap, let's take a look at the headlines once again. Election Commission issues notification for presidential elections. 17 opposition parties meet to decide joint candidate. Start of new era for telecom sector. Cabinet approves auction of 5G spectrum, 72 gigahertz to be auctioned by end of July. Export boom in May. Exports rise 20.5% to $38.94 billion. Gems and jewelry increased to close to $3.5 billion. Rahul Gandhi appears before Enforcement Directorate for 3rd day in a row. Congress holds protest. Many leaders and workers detained. Monkeypox outbreak unusual and worrying, says Director General of the World Health Organization. 1,600 cases detected in 39 countries. And that's all we have in this bulletin. To keep yourself updated, stay tuned to Sansad TV. Till then, goodbye, namaskar.